My parents used my dead grandfather's will to pay off my sister's credit cards, so I took legal action and made sure they lost everything. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and if I'm being honest, the only person in my family who ever really saw me was my grandfather. Not just noticed me, saw me, understood me, respected me. That kind of thing matters when you're growing up in a house where silence is your only form of affection. My parents have always been loud when it comes to Bella, my younger sister. Loud about her school trophies, loud about her dance recitals, loud about how she was destined for greatness. With me, I was lucky if they remembered my birthday without checking Facebook. I used to joke that I was the family ghost, except ghosts get more attention. Grandpa was the only one who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. He'd say, "You've got grit, kid, a rare thing these days." He taught me how to change brake pads, cook perfect scrambled eggs, and how to read people. Watch their patterns, not their promises, he'd tell me. He helped me open my first savings account when I was 17, gave me $500 to start it, and told me, "Don't tell your mom. It'll just start a fight." He paid for my first semester of community college because my parents said they were tapped out after buying Bella a car for graduation. I never asked him for anything, and maybe that's why he decided to leave me something when he passed. I didn't know the details at the time. He wasn't the sentimental type. But before he died, he said, "Everything you are, you earned. One day, you'll understand what that means." I just didn't expect one day to come so fast, or be wrapped in so much ugliness. Because what came after he passed wasn't grief, it was betrayal. The funeral didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a badly directed play, with everyone trying to outsob the other for the spotlight. My mom wailed loud enough to echo off the church walls, clutching tissues like a stage prop. Bella wore a black designer dress and stilettos, fake crying behind $400 sunglasses she probably hadn't even paid for. I kept my mouth shut, hands folded, jaw clenched. I sat near the back, away from the drama, remembering how Grandpa used to say, "Noise ain't grief, stillness is." After the service, people kept coming up to me, squeezing my shoulder, whispering things like, "He was so proud of you," and "He always talked about how responsible you were." A couple of my cousins even asked, "So, did he leave you anything?" Not rudely, just curious. I shrugged, said I didn't know, because I didn't. Grandpa never told me what was in his will, only that I'd understand everything when it's time. But even then, something didn't feel right. I noticed my parents whispering to a man in a navy blue suit during the reception. He didn't talk to anyone else and left before dessert. I caught part of their hushed conversation. Words like executor and filing floated past me like smoke. When I asked my dad later who that guy was, he said, "Oh, just a family friend, don't worry about it." And that was the moment I knew something was off. I didn't have evidence yet, but I felt it in my gut. That wasn't just a family friend. That was a lawyer. And I had a sinking feeling that whatever Grandpa left for me was already being stolen in plain sight. A week after the funeral, I sat my parents down in the kitchen and asked directly, "Did Grandpa leave a will?" My mom blinked, as if the question came out of nowhere. My dad didn't even look up from his phone. She finally said, "He mentioned something once, but if there was a will, it was probably old. Nothing was ever filed." It was the way she said probably, too casual, too rehearsed. I asked if they'd checked his files or contacted his lawyer. My mom frowned and said, "Why are you asking about money already? He's not even cold in the ground." That hit me like a slap. I wasn't being greedy. I just wanted to understand what Grandpa meant when he told me I'd understand everything. But the more I asked, the more they pushed back. They said if anything had been written down, it was likely outdated and not legally binding. Your grandfather wasn't the most organized man, my dad added, chuckling like it was some harmless anecdote. But I remembered differently. Grandpa was organized. He paid every bill on time, kept the folders labeled by year, and had backup copies of every major document. The idea that his will just vanished, no way. That same night, Bella posted a picture on Instagram of a spa resort, captioned, "A much-needed healing trip after the funeral." I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. She didn't have a job. She hadn't even made it through 2 semesters of college. So where was the money coming from? I didn't know what scared me more, the idea that my parents were lying to me, or the creeping suspicion that Grandpa had left me something important, and they had already taken it. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling that conversation at the kitchen table, my mom's clipped tone, my dad's deflections, the way Bella vanished on a luxury getaway without a single financial worry. Something didn't add up. So I started digging, not through files, through memories. I remembered Grandpa once left me a voicemail while I was at work, saying something about getting things finalized. I hadn't listened to it in years. My phone had changed since then, but I used to back up old voicemails to my email. I searched for hours, heart pounding as I clicked through archived folders. And then, there it was. A crackly, 2-minute message. Grandpa's voice, calm and steady. "Just left the lawyer's office, kiddo. Everything's in writing now. You're covered. I made sure you'll be okay, no matter what they say. Keep your head on straight. Love you." I listened to it 3 times, sitting on the floor in the dark, shaking. He hadn't just thought about leaving me something. He'd done it. The will existed. But if it did, where was it? The next day, I reached out to my Uncle Rob, Grandpa's younger brother. We weren't close, but I remembered him being at the funeral. When I asked if he knew who Grandpa's lawyer was, he hesitated. Then he said, "Didn't your mom already file the paperwork? I thought you were all squared away." I froze. That meant the will had been read, or at least accessed. They knew what it said, and they'd made damn sure I didn't. At first, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Grief can make people see shadows where there aren't any. That's what I told myself every time I caught Bella in a new outfit or saw another delivery box on the porch. But denial only works until the truth gets too loud to ignore. One morning, I woke up to see Bella filming a GRWM video in the kitchen, complete with a brand new iPhone, a box of Sephora products, and a purse that looked expensive. I asked her casually, "New bag?" She didn't even look up. "Yeah, Michael Kors, gift to myself." "A gift? From what job?" I said, and she rolled her eyes. "Ugh, you're so judgmental. You don't know how stressed I've been. Grief shopping is valid." Then she slammed her room door like I'd asked about a murder instead of a purse. Later that week, she posted a TikTok haul, over $2,000 worth of clothes, shoes, and accessories. Her caption, "Grief shopping, Asha self-care, Os rip grandpa." I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She was flaunting money like it grew on trees, and I knew she had none of her own. And if she wasn't paying for it, someone else was. That night, my dad left his laptop open on the kitchen table. I don't even know why I looked. Guilt? Rage? Desperation? Either way, I found an email thread, dated 2 weeks after the funeral, between my parents and an estate manager. Subject line, "Disbursement from M.E. Howard Trust. Confirmation of funds transfer." Attached were bank statements. Over $80,000 had been moved. That trust was Grandpa's, and I wasn't mentioned in a single line. I didn't come at them screaming. I wasn't raised like that. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. One evening, after dinner, I asked calmly, why was I left out of Grandpa's trust? My mom stiffened. My dad lowered his fork. Bella stayed glued to her phone like it wasn't her business. What are you talking about? My mom said, almost too casually. I saw the emails, the disbursements. You took money from Grandpa's estate and never even told me. She stared at me like I was insane. We didn't take anything, we handled things. You wouldn't understand, it's complicated. Then she added, and honestly, you're making this about money, which is really disappointing. Disappointing, disappointing. That word hit me like a sucker punch. All my life, I'd been the one who never asked for anything. Never needed bailing out, never made trouble. Bella dropped out of school twice, blew through jobs, and maxed out 4 credit cards. And still, she was the one they defended. I turned to my dad. Did Grandpa leave me anything? He sighed. Your grandfather wanted peace, not more fighting. He didn't want the family tearing each other apart over inheritance. That wasn't an answer. It was a deflection. Then my mom leaned in and said, he left you his values. Isn't that more important than some check? I stared at her, stunned. Not just by the words, but by how proud she looked while saying them. That night, I sat alone in the garage, the one Grandpa and I built shelves in. Fists clenched, jaw locked, trying not to break. They stole from me. Not just money, but his final wishes, and I realized if I didn't fight back now, they'd erase me from his legacy forever. The next morning, I skipped work and drove across town to find Mr. Ellison, Grandpa's longtime attorney. I'd only met him once, years ago, but I remembered his name from that old voicemail. He worked out of a plain brick building with a brass plaque and dusty windows. When I walked in and introduced myself, he blinked twice, then slowly smiled. Ah, he said, you're Michael. Your grandfather spoke about you often. I swallowed hard. Did he leave something? A will? Mr. Ellison nodded without hesitation. Yes, he did. In fact, you were named as the sole beneficiary of his personal savings, his house, and the trust. The room tilted for a second. I asked, then why wasn't I told anything? He paused, then furrowed his brow. That's strange. Your mother told us you'd declined the inheritance. She even provided a signed waiver. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. I never signed anything. He opened a file drawer and pulled out a thin folder with my name on it. Inside was a scanned form with what looked like my signature at the bottom. But it was off. Too rounded, the loops wrong. I hadn't signed it. Can I get a copy of this? I asked. Absolutely, he said, watching me closely. Is there a problem? I didn't answer. I couldn't yet. Because in that moment it became crystal clear. My parents forged my signature to steal my inheritance. They looked me in the eye and lied, and they did it with full intention. I walked out of that office shaking. Not with fear, with purpose. I stared at the printed waiver in my hands like it was a loaded weapon, because in a way, it was. The signature was close, but not mine. The M was too neat, the slant unnatural. I write fast and messy. This was slow and calculated. It wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was fraud. I took the document to a handwriting analyst. I didn't even know they were a thing until I looked it up that night. Found a guy nearby with 20 years of experience and good reviews. I handed him the waiver and a few of my old signed lease agreements for comparison. He called me 3 days later and said, "Yeah, that's not you. It's an amateur job, but definitely forged." I felt like the air left the room. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They had lied, deliberately, legally. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got quiet. The kind of quiet Grandpa used to talk about when you're really focused, when you've made up your mind. Because now, this wasn't just about me. This was about what they did to him. They desecrated his trust, used his death as an excuse to funnel money into Bella's shopping habits and their own cover-ups. They could have at least said his name while doing it. But no, they buried him, then buried the truth. I called a probate attorney the next morning, told her everything. She didn't even hesitate. "We can file immediately. What they did is illegal, and we have proof. You'll need to be ready for this to get ugly." Ugly? My family had already gotten there. Now it was time to bring the truth into the light. And I was done being quiet. The day the court papers were served, my phone didn't stop buzzing. 20 missed calls, 14 voicemails, a dozen texts from my mom, Dad, Bella, even some extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years. The messages all had the same tone. Shock, outrage, betrayal. Funny, coming from the people who actually betrayed me. My mom's first voicemail was pure theater. "How dare you attack your own family like this? Do you know what you're doing to us?" As if they weren't the ones who stole from me. As if this wasn't the only way I could stop being erased. That night, my aunt called. One of the few relatives who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. She said, "Your mom is going around telling everyone you're trying to steal the estate from Bella, that she and your dad sacrificed everything to protect you and now you're stabbing them in the back." I laughed, bitter and low. "Yeah? Did she mention the forged signature?" Silence. Then a soft, "No." It didn't take long for sides to form. Some cousins messaged me in private, saying they were proud of me for standing up. Others unfollowed me on everything and blocked my number. Bella posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story. "Nothing hurts like being betrayed by someone you thought was family." Her comments were full of sympathy, because no one knew the truth yet. The worst part wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the social fallout. It was realizing how fast people turned once their lives were threatened. They didn't miss me. They missed me being silent. But I wasn't staying silent anymore. I was done playing the role of the good son, and I hadn't even shown them what I had yet. It happened on a Tuesday. My attorney called and said, "We got a package from Ellison's office. You're going to want to come in." I thought it was more financial paperwork, maybe old statements or legal forms. But when I got there, she slid a thick envelope across the table, sealed in wax. Inside was a letter, written in Grandpa's unmistakable blocky handwriting, addressed directly to the probate judge. It read, "If you're reading this, then my son-in-law or daughter has interfered with my estate. They do not have my trust. They have a history of deception and entitlement. My grandson Michael is the only person I have faith in. If they attempt to suppress, delay, or alter my will, I am requesting immediate investigation." I sat back in the chair, stunned. Grandpa hadn't just anticipated betrayal, he prepared for it. Attached to the letter were additional documents. Copies of signed statements he made in the months before his death, outlining his intentions in case of manipulation. One even listed specific red flags to watch for: forged signatures, misrepresented paperwork, Bella receiving large transfers. It was all there, like he saw this coming from a mile away. My attorney looked at me and said, "This changes everything. It's not just civil now. With this and the forgery, we could be looking at criminal charges." I felt the breath leave my lungs, but not from fear. From validation. He believed in me, right up to the end. And now his words would speak louder than mine ever could. They tried to erase me from his story, But he made sure the last word belonged to us, and I was just getting started. The first court hearing felt like walking into a lion's den with nothing but my grandfather's words as armor. My parents were already seated when I entered, my mom with red swollen eyes like she'd been rehearsing tears in the mirror. My dad avoided my gaze completely. Bella sat smugly at the end, dressed like she was heading to brunch, not court. Their lawyer opened with a statement about misunderstandings within grieving families. He painted me as emotionally unstable, suggesting that my grief had manifested in misplaced resentment. I wanted to laugh, or maybe scream. But then it was our turn. My attorney calmly presented the timeline, the will, and the forged waiver. She didn't dramatize. She didn't need to. The judge flipped through the documents, his expression growing colder by the minute. Then we played the voicemail from Grandpa, the one where he said he had everything in writing and trusted me. You could have heard a pin drop. My mom looked like she might faint. Bella finally stopped tapping on her phone. My dad leaned forward, elbows on the table, face blank, but I saw the way his hands trembled. Then my attorney handed over the sealed letter Grandpa had left for the judge. The judge read it silently, then looked up at my parents and said, "This is not a matter of grief, this is a matter of fraud." No one spoke after that. The hearing ended shortly after, but the damage was done. The court had heard my grandfather's voice. Now, the people who lied about honoring him would have to answer for everything, and this time they couldn't lie their way out of it, not with the law watching. I thought the courtroom would be the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 days after the hearing, my car tires were slashed. All 4, in broad daylight. The repair shop said it was intentional. Clean cuts, probably a box cutter. No cameras in the lot, no witnesses. Just silence and rubber scraps. Then came the calls to my landlord. He pulled me aside one morning, awkward and pale. "I, got an anonymous tip that you're harassing your elderly parents for money." I laughed in disbelief. "Do you believe it?" He shook his head, but I could see the doubt itching behind his eyes. Emails flooded my inbox, fake job applications submitted under my name. Someone even tried to report me to HR at work, claiming I'd made violent threats against family members. Luckily, my boss saw right through it, but still, I felt poisoned from every angle. No one in the family texted, no one called to check in. The cousins who had once messaged support disappeared. Even my closest friend Marcus said, "Dude, maybe just let it go. It's not worth your sanity." But it was worth it. Because it wasn't just money, it was principle, it was identity, it was Grandpa. Still, there was a night, one long, ugly night, where I almost quit. I sat in the dark, phone off, door locked, tears drying on my cheeks, thinking, what if they win? What if I end up alone, broke, hated, for doing the right thing? But then, I found an old photo of me and Grandpa in the garage, both of us grinning, grease on our hands, pride in his eyes. He believed in me when no one else did, and I wasn't about to let them bury that belief under lies and fear. They tried to ruin me, but all they did was remind me who I really was. The final hearing felt surreal, like walking into the last scene of a story I never wanted to be part of. But this time, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was ready. My attorney stood taller than ever. She'd seen the mess from every angle and built a case too solid to ignore. My parents sat stiffly, drained of theatrics. Bella didn't even show up. Apparently, she couldn't emotionally handle the outcome, according to a sobbing voicemail she left me the night before. The judge reviewed everything, again, the will, the forged signature, the financial transfers, the expert testimony. He barely looked at my parents as he read his statement. He called their actions calculated deception. Said the waiver had been poorly forged and maliciously submitted. He acknowledged the emotional toll, the social retaliation, and the abuse of legal processes. Then, in front of a courtroom packed with silence, he declared the original will valid and fully enforceable. I was officially the rightful beneficiary of Grandpa's estate. Not just the money, but the trust, the house,